So I was working on part 5 of the Zero devlog, and this happened. Let's talk about it. Also, a few days after recording this, they released a statement, but more on that a little later. So for those that don't know what happened, the higher ups at Unity have announced that starting January 1st of next year, they'll be implementing what they call a Unity runtime fee. Essentially what this means is that devs will be charged a fee every time their game is installed on a device after the game has met certain thresholds that we'll get into in just a sec. This announcement was immediately met with a lot of backlash, and rightfully so, but let's talk a little bit more about what it is before getting into that. So here's the pricing plan from the official site. They've updated it to try to clear up some confusion, although they're doing a pretty terrible job at it. Here are the thresholds I mentioned earlier. It varies from version to version. The first threshold is how much revenue a game makes within a 12-month period. For personal and plus editions, this is $200,000, and for higher versions, it's $1 million. The second threshold is installs. At the lower level is 200,000 installs and $1 million for the higher tiers. Once a game meets both of these thresholds, the developer is charged for each install afterward. The amount varies depending on the version of Unity, number of installs, and the region. Unless you're using personal or professional. In that case, it's just straight up 20 cents per install. They said that this change is aimed at larger developers, but the potential bankruptcy for smaller devs is what's the issue here, especially because of how low the fee is for companies that can afford higher versions of Unity. I've been seeing a little bit of confusion going around regarding exactly when the fees kick in, but yeah, your game has to meet both thresholds before the fees can happen. So a free game that isn't monetized in any way whatsoever should never meet the revenue threshold, and thus would never be charged install fees, in theory. The biggest question here outside of why is how are the installs tracked? And the answer is, we don't know. And honestly, it doesn't sound like they do either. The only information we have to go on as of the time of this recording is that they're tracking installs using a proprietary software. This counts as installs per device. So a single purchase could lead to multiple installs and thus multiple charges. And that's scary.
It's also bullshit.
This is going to potentially hit free-to-play and mobile games the hardest because unlike titles with upfront price tags, these games aren't guaranteed to make anything per install. They rely on microtransactions, ads, or both. Meaning every install after meeting the thresholds will technically put them in the negative. And it just gets worse from here. They stated that this is going to be a retroactive policy, so older games that were originally under Unity's previous plan will now have to be under the new one. And if those games' past performance meet those thresholds, then they're going to start receiving fees for new installs after January 1st. There's a dedicated Twitter thread that goes into more detail about how this all works, and another one dedicated to responses from other devs. Anyway, the only responses I've seen so far are from other indie devs, so I'm curious what the larger companies are thinking about this. I believe that all the pushback they're receiving is 110% warranted. There are devs that are saying that they're going to be pulling their games and others who are considering changing engines, which is no small task. Some people mention it as if you can just switch engines on the project with the click of a button, and it's not that easy, especially for bigger projects that have been in development for years. Projects that were originally under Unity's previous plan and are now being slapped in the face with this new one. It's crazy how devs who've been using Unity for years are now put in a situation where they have to consider learning an entirely new skill set just to be able to keep their projects moving forward. This undoubtedly may set some projects back if they choose to go that route, and if the devs choose to leave Unity, I honestly don't blame them, which sucks because I really like the engine. I've been using Unity for a decade now, and I've seen how much it's improved over the years. I feel like it's a very versatile engine, the interface is user-friendly for newcomers, and there are some big titles that actually use it. With all of this news, I think it's important that devs evaluate their specific use cases to determine what's best for them. Some have stated they're sticking with the engine regardless, some are sticking with it until current projects are finished, and some are outright done with it. Now, what does all of this mean for me? I can only speak on my own situation, which is that at this point in time, I don't see any of my commercial projects ever reaching the thresholds at the lowest level, so the fees won't affect me. But with that said, my trust in Unity as a company is wavering at this point, so I'm weighing my options moving forward. As far as the Zero project is concerned, since I can't monetize the completed project anyway, it isn't going to generate any revenue, which means I shouldn't have to worry about the install fee. And right now, I don't have the time nor resources to port it into to another engine. If I were to do so, it would set the project back to square one because I have zero experience with other engines. In addition to that, the company that I co-founded also has a project in the works that's built in Unity, scheduled for release this year. So it's too late to make a switch there as well. But with that said, as much as I love the engine, I don't know if I'm going to continue using it commercially after January 1st. I don't think this new policy is necessary, and more importantly, I feel like the install verification system could be easily exploited and potentially do a lot of harm. They aren't being transparent enough for me about how installs are verified, and I feel like it could also be a potential breach of privacy regarding exactly what information is being sent from the installation device to Unity. On top of that, the CEO, who also used to be the CEO of EA, go figure, sold 2,000 Unity shares just last week prior to the announcement. Sounds a little shady, I'm just saying. All of this just doesn't sit right with me, and I'm certain that there are some good employees at Unity who are against this but really can't do anything about it. Like I mentioned earlier, Unity released an apology basically stating that they've heard our feedback and will be making some changes to the policy. So we'll see where that goes in a couple days. The last thing I really want to say is, to the devs, evaluate your situations and do what works and what is feasible for you and your projects. To the people who support devs in their projects, remember the reason why you supported them in the first place. The engine that a game is built on shouldn't be the determining factor of whether or not you support them. At the end of the day, that's just my opinion and your decision to make. But that's all I really have to say about this right now, but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. And as always, I appreciate your patience and support. Also, something a bit more positive before I go. I have a new website up, heyimkeely.fun. The domain name was made possible thanks to this video's sponsor, .fun. .fun provides a unique domain name that allows your site to stand out. I'll mainly be using it as a blog site / portfolio for projects and announcements, and also news regarding the company that I co-founded. Click the link in the description and use the code HeyI'mKeely for 90% off on the .fun domain. But that's all I have. Just like you, I'm waiting to see how all this plays out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. See you in the next one. Peace.